Well. Okay, this is James Tripp with an experimental live stream. It's a bit weird. I'm doing this via Zoom. This is why this is an experimental live stream. The topic I'm going to be covering here very briefly is the top 3 NLP books. I had a request from Aaron Mathis with a recommendation, my recommendations for NLP books. Now, I needed to do this live stream because I have another live stream coming up, which I've actually got scheduled for 4 p.m. London time or 8 a.m. California time. And this is with my friend James Carlos. So we're going to be doing NLP aspects of mastery on Saturday the 8th. So this is a sort of rehearsal for this. Obviously, I don't have James. I'm just figuring out the technology, how to use Zoom to live stream. It's a bit odd because there's a massive delay here. So that's kind of weirding me out slightly. So that's the first thing to learn. So anyway, top 3 NLP books. Let's look at this. I got this question from Aaron Mathis about NLP books. And the thing I'll say is it was unspecified. So Aaron's somebody who's looking to learn NLP, and he's asking my recommendations on what NLP books would be great. But the thing about NLP is it's incredibly broad and rich and diverse in terms of its application. So when people contact me personally and ask, sometimes I get this, people ask me for coaching or mentoring in influential communication or conversational hypnosis. And conversational hypnosis is an aspect of NLP I would consider. People often say, will you mentor me in this? Will you coach me in this? I always say, what's your application? Whereabouts do you want to use this stuff? What's the effect that you want to get? Because when I started out, I was using it in teaching. I was using it in soft tissue work. I was using it. The last place I was using it was for change work, which is where I ended up spending a lot of my energy for a lot of years. So when it comes to answering the question, top 3 NLP books, the question is, what are your goals? What are your outcomes? What are your aims? And in absence of that, I'm just going to pick 3 impulsively from my bookshelf that I think are cracking books for various reasons, and I'm going to say why. But I'm also going to give you a bit of extra bonus content here when it comes to NLP books. So here's the bonus content. The bonus content is, if you're new to NLP and you're getting into NLP, what I'm going to recommend that you do is get yourself one of the many introductions to NLP. I've got a couple here. So Teach Yourself NLP. This is by Bavister and Vickers. I believe they are now a married couple. I think they're now Bavister and Bavister. But Teach Yourself NLP. I think this may have a different title now. It might be called Introducing NLP. And here's another one. NLP in 21 Days by Harry, Adler, and Beryl Heather. So NLP in 21 Days. This one I read in about 2005 in the run-up to my first NLP training. Okay, so I've been privately studying NLP for about 5 years, and then I think it was 2006 I did the prac training, and then I finally did prac training to prep. I read this book, and again, it's an overview. The very first introduction I ever read was John Seymour and Joseph O'Connor's, I think that was called Introducing NLP. Oh, I don't know. They've all got these titles which are not very exciting titles. But the thing that these books tend to have in common is they're really renderings of the practitioner material much of the time. So it's almost like somebody took a NLP practitioner manual and expanded it out into a book. There are many of these books. I particularly like this one. I think this one's quite good, quite simple. This one was critiqued a lot by Andrew Bradbury, who unfortunately passed away, but used to run something called Honest Abe's NLP Emporium, where he would review books. I think that might still be out there on the web. So that's a great place to look, by the way, Honest Abe's NLP Emporium. If you can still find it archived on the web, loads of NLP book reviews, fantastic place. So one of the criticisms on Honest Abe's of the Harry Adler and Beryl Heather book here was that it had inaccuracies in it. And you know what? I don't really care about that, because I'm not a scholar. I'm a creator. I want stuff that's useful. I found the book useful. So don't treat any of these books as gospel, the gospel on what NLP is. Just look at them and take what works for you and is what's useful from these books. So I don't get too hung up in the accuracy of them in terms of, is this proper NLP or not? That isn't, it's not something I'm that bothered about, but just bear that in mind. So that's my prequel. Now let's look at these top 3 NLP books, the NLP books that I've chosen. I went round, I just glanced over my bookcase, I felt into my felt sense, I chose these. I can't give you the exact criteria. I maybe in another time space would have picked a different 3 books. But in no particular order, these are the 3 books I've chosen as my top 3 for this video. So there is Frogs into Princes by Bandler and Grinder. Now, this is Richard Bandler and John Grinder live. Steve and Connie Ray Andreas, I think, edited this. It's from live transcripts. If you're looking at the early books, the early NLP books, the things like The Structure of Magic, The Patterns of Milton H. Erickson, these kinds of things, these books that are written tend to be quite heavy and quite dry. I'm not saying they're not valuable books, but unless you really want to wade through and do the work to extract the value from them, they're not necessarily the best place to begin. Whereas Frogs into Princes, it's many years since I read it, but it's a fantastic read introducing NLP in a very organic and live and living and breathing way. This largely relates to change work / therapy, this kind of thing. So this is going to be a book that's going to be mainly probably of interest to people who are looking to facilitate change and transformation in others. It's an excellent book, Frogs into Princes. I don't know if it's the best of these early books, these ones that Steve and Connie Ray Andreas edited, but it's certainly up there near the top. Transformations is very good as well. I will say that. And I almost chose, by the way, just to say this as an aside, some of Steve and Connie Ray Andreas' books like Heart of the Mind and this kind of thing, because they're all excellent as well. So that's the first recommendation, Frogs into Princes. My second recommendation here is The Rainbow Machine, Tales from a Neuro-Linguist's Journal by Andrew T. Austin. That's Andrew Tiberius Austin, I believe. So this is a great book from Andy, and I've read this a couple of times. This really brings NLP to life. It really brings NLP to life. It's a collection of vignettes about client work and this kind of thing. So it's all kind of this real world grounded stuff. And certainly, I think what it does is it opens up one's eyes to the possibility of NLP as a very dynamic, very creative, very free-flowing discipline, perhaps an undisciplined discipline, in a way that perhaps people don't get when they think of NLP as a collection of patterns or rigid approaches or whatever, which is the way it's often taught. So Andy is quite artful and quite elegant, very creative in his thinking. So this is an excellent book. It's quite an old book now, but still really quite a classic. So I would recommend this. And again, it's going to have this bias towards the sort of change work therapy side of things. The final book I've chosen for my top 3 is a book I've kind of got mixed feelings about. It is L. Michael Hall's The Sourcebook of Magic. Now, this book I have found myself referencing over and over again across time. Perhaps not for a little while, but for a long time I referenced it over and over again. It is basically a catalogue of various formalized NLP processes. Now, here's the thing. As you know, if you come on the webinar on Saturday, which is the Aspects of Mastery webinar, again, I'll mention the time. It's 8 a.m. California time, 4 p.m. London time, Saturday the 8th. I'll be speaking to James Sakalis. We're going to be talking about improvisation in NLP. NLP being a live thing where you create in the moment, you create responses for people. So I'm not a big fan of running stock patterns, but there are a lot of NLP stock patterns that have been developed over the years. And there's a great deal of value in studying them. And it's not so much learning the pattern, it's what you learn from the pattern. So what Michael Hall has done with this book is he's basically catalogued them all and written them up and given instructions on how to run them. Okay, and that's excellent to have all of this stuff in one place. I'm sure it's not entirely comprehensive. It says a comprehensive, not the comprehensive, but there's a lot of patterns in here organized into different categories, and it's fantastic in that respect. Where it's slightly less good is the instructions are not perhaps as clear as they could be. It's sort of written in a semi-coaching style where it's like trying to coach your own choices out of you in how you do the patterns. In some places, that's the feeling I get from it. I would say this is not a book for you to learn these patterns from, or certainly not a book to learn NLP from. This is a book if you've got some NLP skills, you've got some basic understanding, you can actually facilitate, you've got some facilitation skills. At this point, this is going to be a useful book for you because you can go, yeah, I can take that and I can make that work. This book won't teach you how to make any of these patterns work. It'll give you some things to play with if you've got the skills. But if you've got the skills, this is a valuable compendium of all these different packages. So sort of mixed feelings about this. It's like it's a brilliant book and a flawed book at the same time. But I'm going to put it there in my top 3 recommendations. So those are my top 3. I had this this sort of preamble that I talked about the introduction books. I want to add some extra bonus content here on the back end. The thing about NLP is you can look at it in whole form and go, right, this is NLP. I'm going to do another video in a few days on the process of learning NLP because there's a lot in NLP. It's a rich set of things that come together. Even if you just look at the practitioner material, there's a lot in there. So you can take an overview of NLP, but at some point, if you really get into it, you're going to want to dive down, dig down. So there's a lot of really specialist books in NLP that I like that I didn't want to mention here, like perhaps Steve Andreas' 6 Blind Elephants. And there's other things that relate to NLP peripherally, like Watzlawick, Weakland, and Fisch's book, Change, Problem Formation and Problem Resolution. Those guys, the Palo Alto Mental Research Institute, the brief therapy research department there, they were modeling some of the same people that Bandler and Grinder were modeling, but coming in from a different perspective and not calling it modeling. They had the influence of Gregory Bateson, so there are these peripheral connections in the mix. If you go back in, start looking at what Gregory Bateson had to offer, if you really geek out, get down that rabbit hole, Steps to the Ecology of Mind, these sorts of books. There's a lot of rich stuff there, but there's something that really sits in the background, I think, of NLP. And I know that John Grinder has played down the influence of this, but the famous NLP presupposition, almost the first presupposition of NLP, so-called presupposition that people learn, is the map is not the territory. And these are words uttered by a guy called Alfred Korzybski, who created a system called general semantics. And general semantics was looking at how we distort the world with our thinking and how to make sure that we don't fall foul of that. We understand that how we see things is not how they are, it is merely how we see them. And learning to maneuver in relation to our own epistemological systems, if you like, if you forgive the wordy rendering there. So getting back into general semantics, I found to be a really useful thing that significantly upped my game in NLP. Now, if you look, I could pull it, I wish I'd got it off the shelf ahead of time. Alfred Korzybski's book, Science and Sanity, I'm looking at it over here. It's thick. It's a thick, heavy book. For the hypnotists among you, if you ever do book and balloon, the old book and balloon test, that would be a good book if people could imagine it. It's big and it's thick and it's heavy. Science and Sanity. I'm not going to recommend Science and Sanity if you want to go deeper into the antecedents of NLP. But there are more accessible fonts into Korzybski's work and into general semantics. So, as I say, I was picking books off the shelf. There's one I couldn't find, which is called Language in Thought and Action by Kanazawa, I think the guy's name is. So Language in Thought and Action. That is an excellent book, which I think really summarizes Korzybski's perspective and brings some other interesting bits and pieces in as well. It's not pure general semantics, but that's really fantastic. And for me, that really helped up my game in terms of NLP and beyond NLP in terms of hypnosis and looking at how we use our minds to shape our lives, which is what Chaos Wave, this channel, is all about. So there's that. I did pluck a couple of others off. So there's Drive Yourself Sane by Kodish and Kodish. Drive Yourself Sane by Kodish and Kodish. Again, this is an excellent take, an excellent way into general semantics. Using the uncommon sense of general semantics is the name of the book. So, you know, I think this is a fantastic way into general semantics. The last book, which could open up a whole other tunnel in itself, perhaps reality tunnel we could say, is Robert Anton Wilson's Quantum Psychology. Robert Anton Wilson's Quantum Psychology. Robert Anton Wilson, I love Robert Anton Wilson. He's been a huge influence on me, very eclectic thinker. And a huge influence on Robert Anton Wilson is general semantics. So this book, Quantum Psychology, is essentially Robert Anton Wilson's take on general semantics, but he's not doing it in a scholarly way. He's really taken it and really created with it. So he's created something, he's created his own thing. He's done his own thinking because he's a guy who rigorously explored with things. He's not just facsimile copying somebody else's ideas. Robert Anton Wilson was a true explorer. So there's a lot of value in this. This one's called Quantum Psychology, How Brain Software Programs You and Your World. So not strictly an NLP book by any means, but if you're going on that journey, these books are powerful generative catalysts. They're going to deepen your game, or they're going to take your game to the next level, depending on which metaphorical rendering you prefer. Okay, so, I had a little thing come in here. This is a weird thing. I had Mail Goodwine say hi. So hi, Mail, thank you for saying hi. Okay, so that's fantastic. If you've got any, if you watch this video, if you're not familiar with James Tripp Chaos Wave, and this is the kind of content you're interested in, using your mind to shape your life, mind tech, life tech. I've got some fantastic plans in the work. I've got some very exciting people. I want to start doing more interviews with people that I want to interview from the wider world out there. And if you're interested in all of this stuff, using your mind to shape your life, hit subscribe on the channel, hit the notifications bell. That would be fantastic. If you like this video, if you're watching it live or watching the replay, please do like the video. And if you have any questions, especially at the moment about NLP, because we've got the webinar with James Tripp, James Tripp, that's me, with James Sakalos, got the webinar with James Sakalos, NLP Aspects of Mastery on Saturday the 8th. 8 o'clock in the morning, California time, 4 o'clock in the afternoon, UK time. Use the comment section, okay? Because then I can bring the questions in to the webinar. Okay, so if you made it live, fantastic. If you are watching this back and you've enjoyed it, thumbs up and ask the questions. That way, this conversation can continue. So that's where I wanted to end that, wasn't it? But I have no idea, because this is an experimental webinar. I have no idea how to stop it. I have no idea how to stop it. But I will find out. Look, here we go. All right, here we go. Stop live stream. So once again, thank you very much. Ask the questions. The conversation will continue. And you're all wonderful.